right, thank you, Diana, and hello to everyone. Again, I'm Deanne Zettler. I'm the head of product and technology here at PCI SSC. Now, this time last year, we first introduced our vision to transition PCI into a product-centric organization. So today, I'm very excited to talk about the framework that we're rolling out that is designed to drive higher value to the payment community. All right, so I'd like to have a little bit of fun with this today. So as we start talking about how the PCI framework was designed, it actually reminds me of when my kids were young, and namely their passion for Legos. So my kids are a little bit older, so we don't have as many Legos around the house, but I fondly remember they absolutely loved playing with Legos. So when they got that new Lego set, they were excited to rip that box open, empty those pieces on the ground, and put that set together. However, it became a little overwhelming looking at all of those pieces and trying to understand how they would fit together to form that structure on the box. However, when they took the time to carefully construct those pieces, leveraging the guidance, the instruction manual that came with the box, those Legos came to life into something of more value, such as an airplane that they can imagine which is soaring through the sky, or even a car that somehow was racing with that spaceship in the sky. But ultimately, with all the pieces being put together, those Legos turned into something of higher value than just those individual pieces that came out of the box. Now, at PCI, when you look at our publications independently, they can look like a long list of pieces that might be difficult to apply. However, when you start connecting those publications together, for example, the standard with the publish program guide, in addition to that report template, it develops more comprehensive value. So keep this in mind in your back pocket as we start talking about how our framework was designed. Now, PCI provides value to the payment industry through our mission, and that's to help secure payment data globally. So how do we do this? Well, we would say primarily through our flagship product, which is our standards. As a standards organization, we develop and manage payment security standards. But the Council also has a number of what we call augmented products that actually help put those standards into use. So for example, we have our qualification programs for our security professionals and organizations aligned to our standards. We also provide listings of products and solutions that actually meet PCI standard requirements and also the program requirements as well. We also provide training and testing to qualify our security professionals and organizations. So some of you might have taken that training just this last week. And then we also create a number of guidance documents that provide supplemental information for our standards, and then also those supporting documents, as I mentioned, such as the reporting templates that help put that standard into use. Now, I also want to note that we have a number of quality programs focused on our assessors and also on lab management as well. And again, that's to ensure the integrity of our qualification and our listing programs as well. Now, what is most impactful is how all of these products work together, to provide that value to the payment industry. And that's why we're shifting into a product family framework. All right, so today, I'd like to introduce 7 product families that are going to be providing that strategic framework for the future of our standards portfolio. So as you can see, that includes data and environment, mobile, device, P2PE, key management, software, and card. Now, these product families address all of the 15 standards that we have in use today. And it also provides that forward-looking standard strategy that I mentioned earlier. They provide that path in terms of how we're going to be consolidating and realigning our standards in the future, as we discussed in the 2024 community meeting. Now, these product families also include those augmented products that I just talked about, to help put those products in the standard into use. So you can think of these product families as little mini Lego sets, that have many pieces that snap together to provide more value. All right, so let's talk about what those pieces are that are comprised within our product families. Now, on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that our product families are comprised of our standards and our supporting programs. So let's start to apply the framework starting with our standards. All right, now you can see at the top of the screen, we have all of our 15 standards that are mapped into our product families. You can also see that these standards are represented in different time horizons. So for example, you can see baseline standards from 2024. You see Horizon 2, which is out 1 to 3 years from now. And then you also see these target state areas, which is ultimately providing that North Star in terms of where our standards portfolio is heading. So if we just look at a few of these examples here, if you look within mobile, you can see that in 2024, we have 3 standards. We have our MPOC, SPOC, and MPOC. As we look into Horizon 2, we're looking at how do we potentially consolidate and realign these standards into a single standard, right, that ultimately aligns into our target state area of mobile security. If we take a second example, if we look at our key management operations or key management product family, you can see in 2024, we have our PCI PIN standard in use. As we look into Horizon 2, we're developing a new key management operations standard, and the goal is ultimately to integrate PCI PIN into this new key management standard. And again, this ultimately aligns into our target state area within key management. So let's start to add those augmented products, right, that help put those standards into use. So that includes items in our programs, right, that have many components, right? So some of those components include our training courses, right, to really kind of describe, provide an education in terms of what's changing within our standards, what's changing within our programs. We also want to make sure that our listing programs are ready, both from an assessor perspective and from a lab management perspective. And of course, we have the view in terms of the qualifications supporting our standards and programs. Now, as part of our go-to-market planning, we're not just focused on the readiness of the standard. Our end-to-end product delivery is really focused on all of these elements that are needed in conjunction with the standard to put them into use. So overall, you can see that our goal here is really to ensure that our releases aren't just standard-centric, right? But you're able to put all of those elements into use out of the gate. Now, as we take a step back, and I know this is a very busy slide, it's probably the busiest slide you'll see over the next couple of days, but you can see how this framework really provides a view in terms of the PCI publications and how they fit together, right? Just like the Lego sets that we talked about a little bit earlier. So now that we've talked a bit about our product framework, we've introduced our product families, I want to spend a little bit of time in talking about a major input into our product family design, and that's our target state standards roadmap. So you can think of this a bit of our master Lego building plan, and we're going to spend some time looking at those building instructions. Now, in the 2024 community meeting, I first introduced an overview of how all of our standards work together, and I also introduced those target state areas in terms of where we're evolving into. So today, I'm very happy to say we're staying true to that strategy. And what I'd like to do is just spend a little bit of time talking through what this includes so that we're all on the same page as part of our evolution. So here on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that we have all of the 15 standards that are in use today. They cover a lot of ground. However, there is a level of duplication which causes a bit of complexity. Now, the council has plans basically to consolidate and realign these standards. And again, our goal is to ensure that we have consistency across our standards, that we're reducing that duplication as much as possible, and of course, that we're addressing the future needs in payment security. So as we think about the future of payment security, there are these target areas that you see here on the right in orange. And we're expecting to evolve our standards portfolio into what we're calling a future security framework. Now, these target areas, they directly align into the product families that I discussed earlier. And ultimately, they are providing that North Star in terms of where we're heading as an organization. Now, our goal really is to look at where are we in 2024, where were we, and then how do we actually build a roadmap into these target state areas into the future? So as we start talking about the roadmap, that's going to include a series of future revisions of our standards. It's also going to include introducing some new standards, right, or even some additional modules. We're also going to be sunsetting some of our existing standards as we're transitioning into this future framework. So just to use a couple examples here, because again, I know there's a lot on the slide here, but if you look at the standards that are noted in purple in that middle column, that represents our new standards. So again, you can see that we're developing a new key management operations standard. We already went through our first RFC, we're preparing for our second RFC. We're also evaluating the potential of a new environmental security standard. So this is aligned to the future of DSS, obviously focusing on environmental security. And Candace Young is going to talk about this a little bit further later today. Now, we've also added modules to some of our existing standards. So for example, you can see we added third-party apps to our PTS POI standard in our version 7 release. And then we're also going to be adding SDK into secure software, which is planned later this year. Now, in turn, some of the standards might be retired, right, as we consolidate and realign into the future. So if you look at some of these standards that are noted here in light blue, for example, as I mentioned, PCI PIN is planned to be integrated into our KMO standard. And then also our 3DS SDK standard would be integrated into secure software and ultimately retired at a certain point. Now, these are just examples in terms of the change in terms of how we're evolving our portfolio into the future. Now, to put this on a timescale, you can see that we've already released 2 standards that were revised earlier this year. So that includes our PTS POI version 7 standard, and then it also includes our P2PE version 3.2 standard. Now, through 2026, we have 4 additional revisions planned, 3 revisions and 1 new standard, and that is within the device, software, P2PE, and key management product families. So this roadmap obviously demonstrates a plan. As you probably have created plans in the past, it has the possibility to change over time. But this is actually the first time that the Council is being so transparent around how our portfolio of standards is evolving, and especially on a time horizon as well. So again, just as Gina was noting a little bit earlier, the Council is continuing to build roadmaps to give that view in terms of what's coming ahead. Now, as we plan for the future, we're working with you, the wider payment industry, to help inform our roadmap, right, and help inform our standards, and that's through our RFC process. In addition to the RFC process, we also have been working with our stakeholder engagement groups. So some of the additional groups that we've been working with that's been noted a little bit earlier this morning is our Board of Advisors. Our Board of Advisors now has the ability to vote on new standards and on major releases of our standards as well. We also work very closely with the TGG, our Technology Guidance Group, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're giving us guidance as we're thinking about the change and evolution. We do have intermittent type conversations to get feedback along the way. We also work very closely with the GEAR, again, the Global Executive Assessor Roundtable, and we get that perspective of an assessor, right, just in terms of what they're seeing from their day-to-day, and they give us recommendations in terms of where to focus, where there's challenges, right, or where we might want to focus in the future as well. And then we also are working with our REBs, right, our Regional Engagement Board, and those boards are so important to give perspective what's happening across the globe. So these groups are all in addition to the various levels of participating organizations that already engage in the RFC. Now, Gina mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I really want to emphasize this, that we had a record-setting year based upon the number of stakeholder engagement points we had. So that was not only through the RFCs, but that was also through meetings that we had with our engagement groups. And then it was also through new collaboration tools that we rolled out this year as well, right? So we had more joint feedback on change opportunities as well. So you can see that stakeholder centricity is really an essential part of our product vision moving forward. Now, to bring the product vision to life, the Council has introduced new roles within the Council, so they're product management roles. So today, I'd like to introduce our product leaders, who's Candace Young, Alex Epileo, who's relatively new to the Council, Jake Marcinko, and then Mike Thompson. And Mike Thompson's playing a dual role as a standards engineer as well. Now, this team is really driving that product mindset, really focusing on the value of our product families, right? Understanding stakeholder needs. So they're here with you at the meeting here today. They'll be interfacing with you through all of the networking events as well. And then also this team is driving that cross-functional collaboration within the council so we have those integrated release plans. So don't just take it from me. I'd like to bring the team out to speak with you directly. So at this point, I'd like to bring out Candace Young to the stage. She's our product leader for our data and environment product family. Hi, Candace.
Hello, Deanne.
Tell us more about what's happening within the data and environment product family.
Thank you so much. So hello, everyone. My name is Candace Young. And before I get started with the data and environment product family, I'd like to take you through some of the content that we've been doing across our product families to provide some overarching guidance material that kind of funnels through the different products that we've got. So our goal really at the council is, with each production of a guidance document, we want to make sure that it's a singular resource that can provide its implementers with as many resources across the different products as we can. And so they could connect the different pieces and be very valuable to each use. So here are 3 examples I have here on the screen of how we've done that. So we've got cryptography guidance. So that was recently published. Yes, it is heavily focused on PCI DSS, but certainly there's content available in there for our other products. AI principles. And that was a blog post that we published most recently, looking at what implementers should not do, and may do when implementing different AI practices throughout the payments ecosystem. And thirdly, authentication guidance. So that is an update to our multi-factor authentication guidance released in 2017, heavily focused on DSS for sure, but it has more broader implications to our other standards. And as for what data and environment has been up to for 2025, well, firstly, what is data and environment? So I know Deanne touched on it a little bit earlier, but essentially data environment is comprised of 3 standards. We've got PCI DSS, that protects payment account data and the environment. We've got 3DS Core, and that's the authentication process that happens before the transaction takes place. And then we have the token service provider standard, and that is about generating and issuing EMV code tokens. Though they address different parts of the payments ecosystem, their goal is certainly the same: to protect the payment environment and the assets within them. So the data and the environment. And to drive that comprehensive value, I'm very excited to be that singular resource for you to kind of really help you along the way as we kind of navigate this evolving dynamic payments ecosystem together. So next, the next big driver would be what's next with PCI DSS. And certainly after lunch, I have a talk on this specifically. So when you finish eating, come on back in here and we can talk a little bit more about some of our goals for the future of PCI DSS. And next, to tell you a little bit about mobile and device, I'd like to welcome to the stage Alex.
The makeup ladies when they saw King.
Hello, Alex. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Yeah. Good. I know you're new to the council, and this is actually your first time presenting on the APAC stage here with the community meetings. One thing I'd like to share about Alex is she most recently completed the Sydney Marathon. And actually, she's on her way to completing all of the world's biggest marathons. We're so excited to have her here with us at PCI SSC. Tell us a little bit more, Alex.
Thank you, Candace. I'm so excited to be here. Swadika. So, like Candace mentioned, I recently joined PCI. It's been a little over 6 months. I'm the product manager for our device and mobile product families. And like Candace mentioned, I like to run marathons, and I'm on my way to completing all the 6 world majors. And when I think about it, running a marathon and what we do here at the council, they're very similar, right? If you know anything about running a race or a marathon, you don't just get to hop to the finish line, right? It's a long process. It's 1 mile at a time, 1 step at a time. Slowly you pace yourself, and then you make it to the finish line. And no matter how well you've trained, a lot of times there may be setbacks. There may be things that you didn't plan for, right? It may be the weather. It may be the course. It may be things that you've never even thought about. And it happened to me during the Sydney Marathon, like Candace mentioned. And I had delayed flights which caused misconnections. I got to Sydney less than 24 hours before my race, right? So I didn't have time to get over my jet lag. I was tired when I was standing up even at the start line, I was already tired, right? But I somehow managed to make the first 20 miles. And after that, the jet lag, the tiredness all kicked in. Just got off a 17-hour flight. My legs were not ready, and I'm like, I can't run anymore. I'm texting my friends, even on the course, I'm texting my friends back home saying that I can't do this anymore. I just want to stop and go home. I want to bed. I want to sleep, But they were like, no, you need to keep going. Slow down your pace. You can't get to the finish line. And they kept encouraging me to keep going on. And you guys, our stakeholders, you are our pacers, right? You are the ones giving us feedback on what we need to do, about where we need to pick up our pace, where we need to slow down. So we're listening to you. We're listening to you for feedback on what you're seeing in the industry. You are our boots on the ground. And so there are different forums, like Deanne already mentioned. You can be a PPO, you can be part of our BOA. So there are various ways in which you can participate and give us feedback. And if you're already not doing that, come see me after the break, right? And we'll talk about how you can get involved. But like I said, I'm the product manager for mobile and device. And to talk a little bit about the roadmap of things that we've been doing in the mobile space, and if you are already part of one of our stakeholder organizations, none of these things should be a surprise to you because you've already been a part of it. In the mobile space, we've done a lot this year. So we've published the MPOC 1.1 program guide, and we had the lab training, and along with the test artifacts, we also published the MPOC integration report, and also we conducted a SPOC and CPOC gap analysis. So what's up next for the mobile product family? We are getting ready to publish the MPOC guidance document, and we've already started work on version 2 of the MPOC standard, and we're also looking at a potential integration of SPOC and CPOC into the MPOC standard. On the device product family as well, we've done a lot of work this year. So we've published the version 7 of the PTS POI standard, along with the program guide and the supporting documents like the report templates. And we've just opened up the RFC for HSM. And again, we've listened to stakeholder feedback. So our usual duration for the RFC feedback is 30 days, but we've extended it to 45 days because our stakeholders gave us that feedback. We're also working on developing content for the PTS lab training and the PTS test artifact. So as I said, we've done a lot of work both in the mobile and device space this year, and we've covered a lot of ground, and we are here willing to support the innovations and developments happening in both the mobile and device space, and we're looking to you guys to keep providing us feedback. So with that, I would like to invite Jake to the stage to tell us a little bit more about his product family. Welcome, Jake. Tell us a little bit more about your product family.
All right. Thank you, Alex. So as Alex mentioned, my name is Jake Marcinko, and I'm the product leader for the software, key management, and card production families. Starting off with software, bring you up to date on some of the things that we've done over the last year. We've been very busy on the software security framework in 2025. We just recently conducted a second round of RFCs for both the Secure Software Standard and the Secure Software Lifecycle Standard. And this was in addition to the RFCs that we did on both standards in 2024. We are now in the final stages of revision for both Secure Software and Secure SLC, and we're expecting publication of both of those standards at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. If you would like to learn more about what's involved or what's included in those releases, I have a presentation tomorrow which I will provide you some details about what's included in that release. Now, as far as key management is concerned, this is a new standard and program. Deanne touched on this in her intro. It is intended to replace key management requirements from both within the PTS PIN standard and point-to-point. Now, point-to-point is not going anywhere. It will continue to remain a separate standard. PTS, however, PTS PIN will get incorporated into key management. Dan will talk in a minute a little bit more about what's going on in point-to-point. Also, the key management standard is intended to be a resource for other key management requirements for other PCI standards and programs. Now, as far as key management is concerned, we conducted our first RFC in the middle of 2025 in June. And we're still working, we just finished processing the feedback from that RFC, and we now have a new draft, an RFC 2 draft of the key management standard, which is set to go to RFC at the end of this month. Now, publication for the new KMO version 1 standard is anticipated for the first half of 2026. And then lastly, card production. Card production has largely been in a maintenance phase for most of 2025. The development that we have done for card production has been really focused on tech FAQ updates and other clarifications. However, we have been in active conversations with our stakeholders about whether there's a possibility or need an opportunity to do more strategic work, so perhaps additional development work within the card production space in 2026. Now, we expect more information on this to be available probably in early 2026. And with that, I'll ask Deanne to come back up here and talk about point-to-point.
Watch me.
All right, thank you so much, Jake. So on Mike's behalf, I'll give an update of what's happening within the P2PE product family. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we did have a minor release of our P2PE standard, version 3.2. That was released earlier this year. That also included some PROF templates and then also training. And then obviously, as we're talking about our comprehensive release, we have our portal ready for all the action with that standard as well. So as we're looking ahead into P2P 4.0, it's basically going to be our next major revision of the standard. We're currently looking at how do we really simplify the standard and the program as much as possible. So as we mentioned a little bit earlier, a major part of the P2PE standard, so Domain 5 is going to be integrated into our KMO standard moving forward. And there's some other elements within P2PE that's going to be integrated within KMO as well. So what to look out for? In next year, we're going to have the first and second RFC the first half of the year. And then we are planning to have that major revision towards the end of next year. All right, so in closing, I definitely want to encourage you to stay involved, or if you're not as involved, get involved with the council, and that's really to help shape and influence the future of our standards and our product families. So you can think about it as building with Lego, right? The sets are never complete without the ingenuity of many builders that are all working together. And working together, we're not just assembling products, we're co-creating a living and growing Lego system for the future of payments, one piece at a time. Now, I'd like to thank my team for joining me on stage. If you can give them a round of applause.